here. Good morning, good morning, guys. Sorry about the break in transmission. With that first one. When you are live, anything is possible. The camera decides not to kick in, and StreamYard can be quite fast, so I had to start, but I had to create a new broadcast. So good morning. Thank you so much for those who are here. If you know someone that was in the broadcast that we just ended, please take them, let them know we are back, we are live, and we are running a little bit late, but I'm going to try and stay within the allocated time of between 4:30 and 5 o'clock. I have lost 10 minutes, so I'm going to go straight into the message. Welcome to this episode. I don't know which episode, it's episode number who, but it's a new series that we are running, Dressed for Victory, all right? Dressed for victory. In order to be victorious, there is a proper dress that we need to put on. There is a proper manner in which we need to carry ourselves. So good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Good morning, Smons. Good morning, my lioness. Thank you so much, Noxola, joining us from Heidelberg. Good morning, Setu, who was here, took the first seat on this one. Good morning, guys. And yes, when you are here, you call others or you share in your platform. If you are on YouTube, you copy and paste after hitting the subscribe button. Let me go straight into it in the meantime while you guys are walking in and warming yourselves up. Well, last week we've spoken about the whole armor of God. We've spoken about the whole armor of God. But the first thing, interestingly, that God says before, this is in the book of Visions, that before he even says to us, put on the armor. That's why we have not gotten to the armor yet. There's so much that comes pre us putting on the armor, and that speaks of the importance of the armor of God. And that's why so the things we're talking about is why God is asking us to put on the whole armor. And he says these two very important things. He says, be strong and stand. All right. And in him saying be strong, he doesn't just say be strong. He says be strong in the Lord. In other words, we may have what we call, we may have superficial strength, but God is asking us to receive supernatural strength. All right. So you may have been standing so far because of you stood because of your experience, you stood because of your family name, you stood because of your qualifications and whatever. But God says, that's good, but that will only take us that far. That will only take us far. Receive rather, not because that strength of yours is human. If it's human, it's superficial. Rather stand in supernatural strength. And supernatural strength is found in the Lord. So he says to us, be strong in the Lord so that you can be able to stand. All right. But I thought today, and then he says to us, in order for you to stand, there are things that you need. And he gives us those two things. One, the strength of the Lord. Two, the armor of God. We need to be able to be properly dressed. And we're going to talk about the armor of God. But I felt that perhaps before we go into the armor of God, because what will give us courage, what will give us motivation to put on the armor of God, whether we feel like it or not, what will give us courage to be strong in the Lord, whether we feel like or not, is a motive. We all need a motive. You are here this morning at 4:41. I am here. So if I'm here at 4:41, I was up much earlier. But what's my motive? What's your motive for waking up this morning to come to these sessions? And I'd love to hear that in the chats. But outside of that, what's your motive to wake up and face each day? What's your motive to get up and go to your place of work? Sometimes, even though it's challenging, I'm going to be facing X, Y, and Z in my places of work. It's challenging, but you get up every day and you put on your clothes and you put on your big girl smile and you get into your car and drive to that place, and yet it's challenging. Some of us are sitting in relationships that are challenging, but you are still in that relationship. What's your motive for staying? Some of us are holding on to things. What is your motive? And so this morning, I want us to talk about motive. And as I looked, I realized something, that each and every one of us need a driving force. And we mentioned this last week, when God said to us, stand, all right? When God said to us, stand, And when God said to us, be strong, we realized something, and I revealed it last week, and I said to you, if God asks you to do it, if God calls you to do it, and he says to you, be strong, as we are about to do it, one thing you must know, that it's not going to be child's play. It's not going to be easy. That's the first thing. But the second thing that you must know is that his name will be glorified, all right? So somehow God is asking us to be strong and to stand so that his name may be glorified. Someone is going to be blessed. And of course, the third reason is that when we take a stand, guys, when we refuse to let go, we actually give the enemy the headache. Now, that is never our reason. I don't wake up every day to give him a headache. But the fact that my foot is outside on the bed this morning, I know he starts to tremble. He starts to line up his forces to get in my way. But that's none of my business. It's not my problem to deal with whoever or whatever he puts in my way. So there are reasons that God is asking us to stand. But I want us to look a little bit more closely this morning, more personally, because yes, the glory of God is huge. It's something important. And we speak about it a lot in this platform. And we even say, do not obscure, don't block the glory of God. Yes, the blessing of humanity, as in big, broad humanity, it's something important, all right? But it can be so too big sometimes. But I want you to think about your immediate motive to stand. Your immediate motive to stand. And I'm asking you now, those of us who are here live, why do you keep going? Why are you still holding on? If you are, because I'm making the assumption that you're holding on. I'm making the assumption that you still get up and go to church on Sabbath or on Sunday. I'm making the assumption that you still get up and go to work. I'm making the assumption that you still say, I do. You married your husband many years ago. I married mine 15 years ago, and I still say I do. What's my motive? What's my motive? And that's what I want us to spend some time talking about today. So I'm asking you in the church, tell me what's your motive for holding on to whatever it is that you are holding on. So I just went to dig deep into, oh yes, Lord, you're asking us to stand. But I had to look within myself. But why? Why stand? What is my reason for standing? Now, of course, for me to find possible links and reasons as to why we are standing, I went and looked a little bit into the Bible. The Bible, guys, is full of verses where God is asking us to stand. Stand therefore. Very often, stand therefore. Sometimes it says, hold on. And so the Bible is full of places where God is asking us to stand and know that in whatever scenarios we are dealing with, there are threats and there are opportunities. All right. So what are the opportunities that are there for us when we choose to stand? We once started a ministry years ago when we were starting to get into the whole thing of trying to do something in the name of the Lord. We started a ministry called Dare to Stand. All right. And dare to stand, so we didn't just want to say stand, but we said dare to stand. So when we say dare, which means that every single time you get up in the morning and you roll up your sleeves to do something, it's daring. All right. You're actually daring. And when you dare means you go against the possible reasons for you not to, or the possible forces that are actually stopping you from moving forward. So I went through the Bible. And I haven't got time to talk about everybody, but perhaps allow me to talk about one or two people. But I went through the Bible and I looked for people who stood, and they didn't just stand, but they stood in the strength of the Lord. And I looked at what happened when these men and these women actually stood in the strength of the Lord. I'm fascinated. The Bible it's full. In fact, if you look at the book of Hebrews, right, what I call the hall of fame of faith, it is full of humans. I mentioned the word humans, meaning people that are fallible, people that are born in sin, people that are all born of Adam and Eve, who are fallible. It is full of humans, but these humans were able to stand. And now I know what kept them. They stood in the strength of the Lord. From Abraham, the Bible says, by faith, Abraham, we know about Abraham. We know what he was able to achieve through his standing, but we also know his character. But I was fascinated by Moses. You know, if Moses were to testify, he will tell you that I had to take a stand. Right? I had to take a stand in spite of my fears. God calls upon Moses to go and stand in front of Pharaoh. All right? God calls upon Moses to stand for the liberty of the people of Israel. I don't know who you are this morning, but my sense is that some of you, God is calling upon you to stand. And when you take a stand, I don't want to say if, as if this is something that we must doubt, that when you take a stand, someone or other people will be liberated. It might be someone in your family. It might be someone in your neighborhood. It might be someone in your church. But God is asking you to take a stand for the liberty of some of his people. God calls upon Moses. While he was busy minding his own business, God calls upon Moses to stand. And Moses immediately looks within himself. And hence God has said to us at the beginning of this piece of text to say to us, be strong in the Lord. So our strength is not of our own. But when God asks us to do something, it's human, like Moses did. Moses looks immediately within himself. He says, I can't do this. I stutter. Not only do I stutter, but I'm a fugitive. Right? I'm in exile. I committed a crime. I killed somebody. I buried them. I ran away from home. And that's why I'm here. So I do not qualify to stand for anything right now. And I hope I'm speaking to someone who's saying, I have committed too many crimes. I've made so many mistakes. I've done so much wrong in my past. Dare I say, I've done so much yesterday. In today, this morning, it's a new day. Right? Today, God is dispensing new grace. Today, God is dispensing new mercies. And today, God is asking you to take a stand for the liberty of God's people. It may be something as small as liberating God's people from hunger. It may be something as small as liberating God's people from pain. You know, sometimes you walk into a situation and someone is going through a painful situation. Your prayer, your hug, your words of comfort comes in at that particular time and gives them relief and gives them liberty from the pain that they are dealing with. So I'm not sure what God is asking you to do today, but it may have to do with the liberty of someone. And so God asked Moses to go and stand before Pharaoh so that his people, God's people, the Israelites, can be liberated. Moses looks within himself. All right. And that's a huge mistake that many of us make. The minute that you sense that God is calling you to do something, you start looking around you. You start looking at your human resources. You started looking at your human abilities and forgetting that this thing of standing, this thing of living a life for God and honoring him is a supernatural undertaking. We will not be able to do it in our own power. We will not be able to do it in our own strength. And Moses had to quickly let that go. He says to God, I'm trying to illustrate something here. God says, I know you stutter. I know you are not fluent in speech, but remember, those who I call, I qualify. So I do call the people that are struggling to speak, but the minute I put you, there is no record, guys. There is no record in the Bible that when Moses stood, a stuttering Moses, a sinful Moses, a terrified Moses, and God didn't change those things necessarily, but there is no record that while Moses was dealing with Pharaoh, that he was afraid, that he was stuttering, that he was looking at his human abilities. Moses went and stood before Pharaoh for the liberty of the people of Israel in the strength of the Lord. So I want to give you one motive today, the liberty of your people. The liberty of God's people. But again, when we're talking broadly about God's people, it may seem too big, too broad, and maybe none of your concern. What about your family? We are Africans here. Many of us, yes, you are born of your mother and your father, but we come from a village type of setting. We believe in the real village. It takes a village to raise a child. Many of us here are Africans. You know, within your family, there is that brother, there is that sister. For the elderly people here, there is that parent. All right. Or there is that child of yours. You may have 4, but there is this one child of yours that is giving you challenges. There is that one child of yours that is going through a particular situation. Can I tell you something? God is asking you to stand for the liberty of that child, to hold on for the sake of that child. He revealed something to me the other day, and I shared this with my mother as I was praying. Many of you know that one of my prayer items in the WhatsApp group is the liberation of one of my 2 brothers, and God is working in that regard. From the prison of substance abuse, and God revealed something to me as I was taking a walk, my prayer walk, one of these mornings, and He said to you, "Don't stop praying." So sometimes the only way to stand is to just stand in prayer. He said to me, don't stop praying. and call your mother and tell her not to stop praying. And the reason why my mother was at risk of stopping praying, and some of you might be experiencing this situation where one of your loved ones, not only are they troublesome out there causing themselves trouble, but they are in your face. All right. When this young man is in my mother's face, he's outgoing for my mother. Basically, the enemy, not only has he held on to one of my brothers and keeping him in the grip of substance abuse, but he is using him to go for my mother, to take my mother's peace, to almost destroy my mother's life. And how do you pray for somebody that is out there? How do you stand? Because when we say standing for God's people, it includes those you love and those you do not love. It includes those who love you and those who do not love you. And I'm talking about within your close circles. There may be a colleague that you know they want nothing to do with you. God says stand, even if you stand in silent prayer on behalf of that particular person, because they are in serious trouble. The enemy has them surrounded. The enemy wants to claim them permanently. God says to me, call your mother. Call your mother and tell her, and I want to tell this to mothers that are here who have got children. Tell your mother that the only thing standing between your brother and being destroyed is the prayers of your mother. I went and told Mom, we were crying and sobbing. He says, Mdanam, how do you pray for someone that you know and go for you? And I said, I don't know, Mama, but all I know is that God has sent me a message to say, do not stop praying for him. Don't stop talking to him about him, because if it were for the enemy, he would be dead by now. The devil goes for him and is using him to destroy you. And here's the problem, Mama. When you stop praying, not only do you stop praying for him, you stop praying for the rest of us. And so when you stop praying for the rest of us, the walls around us may just fall. So I'm here to say that God is asking us to stand for the benefit of the liberty of his people. And I'm not talking about the people out there. I'm talking about the people in your immediate circle. They may never know that you prayed for them. They may only ever find out on the sea of glass. But the reason that they are still standing, that the reason that they are not destroyed, even in the paths that they've taken, is because you are standing. So if Moses were to testify, he will tell you that I was not qualified. I was a stutterer. I was a sinner. I was feeling isolated. I was in exile, and God called me from exile and sent me back to stand before the most powerful kingdom at that time, before the most powerful government at that time, and I stood afraid. I stood fearing it. And Moses, guys, and like the story of my mother, not only was he afraid of Pharaoh, but Moses was afraid of the very people that he was there to liberate. He was afraid of the people of Israel, because he asks God, who do I say to them that you have sent me to? Who do I say to them I am? And God says to them, tell them I am. That was God has sent to tell them. So not only was he afraid of the ones that he was going to fight with to liberate God's people, but he was also afraid of God's people. So we stand even for the ones that we are afraid of. We stand safe, of course. You stand safe, of course, but you stand for them on the inside in prayer, in silent prayer. You stand for them somewhere in your private place. You stand for them. But yes, let me tell you what happened. What gave Moses the power to stand? Before you can stand in front of the kingdoms of this world, before you can stand before the forces of darkness of this world, you need to start by standing on holy ground. You remember how God called Moses? You remember how God called Moses? Moses was out there minding his own business, and the next thing he sees a burning bush, a bush that keeps burning, but it is not consumed. And there are so many messages in that illustration of a bush that keeps burning without being consumed. All right, it's God revealing to himself as a supernatural power which just can never be finished. But also God is revealing to himself, because remember, fire represents the Spirit of God. So God reveals himself to Moses to say that just like this bush which burns without being consumed, if you allow yourself to stand before me, and if you allow and you place yourself as a tool in the hand of God, you are the one that you are going to be this thing and the source and this tool that keeps giving and never runs out, because you receive from the source, which is God. But my interest is when God calls to Moses. In fact, when Moses approaches the burning bush, because he's interested, he was still wearing his sandals. He was still old Moses who was looking after his father-in-law's livestock. God says, Moses, stop right there. Before you come any closer, please take your shoes off, because you're standing on holy ground. Take off your shoes. God does not say to him, do not stand. Right? God says, stand, but take off your shoes. Come in here and stand on holy ground, because your strength comes from here. After this, you may put on your sandals. We're going to talk later on about the shoes of peace. But now God says to him, before you dress up, undress. Before you put on, please take off. All right, before you put on the armor of God, before you put on all the items of the armor of God, I want you to first undress. Before you dress for victory, I want you to first undress and come before me just as you are, so that I, God, can dress you myself. He says to him, I want you to take off your shoes and stand before me. God could have said, Moses, don't go any nearer. Because between where you are standing and where I am is holy ground, and where you are standing is unholy ground. So don't come near, stand there. God says, no, I want you to come. And Moses had the privilege, guys, of walking with God. Moses said, I want you to come, and I want you to come as close as possible. But when you come close, know that you're coming into the presence of God. And when you come into the presence of God, you cannot just come willy-nilly. You take your shoes off. You take off everything. Basically, the shoes are representative of all the dust that you have collected. The shoes are representative of all the history that you have collected. The shoes are representative of everything that you have been stepping on that is not good. Take your shoes off and come and stand here in my presence, in front of me, on holy ground. And thereafter, after that, you can go and stand anywhere, before any king, before any kingdom, before any government, before any society, before any demons. If you stand on holy ground every morning in prayer, you will be able to stand before any demons. You'll be able to stand before any fear. And when you stand there, yes, Kanye, Moses says, come and stand here so that I can qualify you. Come and stand here so that I can put upon you the holiness of God. Come and stand here. It's like Moses was having a session. Many of us, when we're going for a particular event, we go and have a whole makeover. Moses, all right, on that mountain was having a supernatural makeover by God. But before God makes you over, you first have to take off some things so that God can put on some things. So ladies, here's what I know. Life is not about to get easy. Right? Life is not about to get easy. And God says, I need you to take a stand. All right? Remember Paul coming to him as I'm closing. Paul comes to him and says, God, I have a thorn here in my flesh. I can't move. Something is biting me. There's something that's causing me pain in my flesh. I can't move. It's painful. I can't move. God says, leave the thorns. Focus on me. My grace is sufficient for you. At the right time, I'll take care of the thorns. But in the meantime, my grace is sufficient for you. But before you are able to move in the grace of God, before you are able to move in the holiness of God, we all need to gather together every single day to get the makeover, a heavenly makeover. So Moses steps in front of God, and he gets a supernatural makeover. Takes off not only his shoes. God needed to take off the shoes of Moses. And as we know what those shoes represent, God needed to take over the guilt that was weighing Moses down for having killed someone. God needed to take off that Moses was struggling with an identity crisis. All right, born a Jew, raised an Egyptian, now an exile. Am I a Jew? Am I an Egyptian? Am I an exile? Who am I? And God had to deal with the identity of Moses. Moses needed to know who he was in the Lord. And so God had to undress Moses of all his issues and his challenges so that he can be qualified to go and stand before the kingdoms of this world. I don't know what your situation are. I have no time to go even deeper into this. But if Esther were to stand here and testify just for 30 seconds, she would also testify that I too was afraid. But I, by the strength of the Lord, having put on the whole armor of God, I was able to stand before the king. And when I stood, I saved the lives of God's people. But before I went and stood before the king, I had to bow low. I had to bow low, put everything aside, put food aside, and get a company of people to stand with me. And that's the beauty, sisters. We can't do this alone. We have a phrase that is almost commercialized in Africa, Yobuntu. And in the story of Esther, we see an illustration. You're going to stand, yes, but you don't have to stand alone. And this young lady realized, I want to go. I have to go. And God says, if you do not go, there might be liberation will come from somewhere else, but you are here for such a time as this. And she realizes, I will not be able to stand before the king who happens to be my husband. I won't be able to stand before the king unless I kneel low. I bow down low before God. But she adds something else. Says, I want to stand, but I need other people to stand with me. So guys, when we say stand, when we form groups of prayer, when we form companies, when we go to church, we are going to a company of those who are also standing, so that if you find yourself falling, that there are those who are going to stand on your behalf while you are in a place of fallenness. There are those who are going to stand, and among other things, they will stand for your liberty. So sometimes you stand so that we can save other people's lives. T.D. Jakes writes a book called Don't Drop the Mic. And one of the illustrations he makes is one I'm going to close with. Guys, stand for the sake of the next generation. We've got to stand in the strength of the Lord. Let's receive the armor that God is giving us, because we need the armor to be able to stand. We need the armor to be able to go through these tumultuous times that we are going through. Right? If standing for the liberty of others is not good enough for you, if standing for the saving of people's lives is not good enough for you, if standing for the alleviation of poverty is not good enough for you, can I ask you to stand for the sake of your children? If you don't have children, for the sake of the next generation, because you will at some point have people that come after you. If you think about it, most of us, I'm 45, and I know many of us here are around the same age, slightly younger, but a number of us older. If you think about it, and I'm speaking now as an African, you know I'm very Pan-Africanist in my approach. If you think about it, we are born of people who are told, you are black, don't sit there, don't use that toilet, don't use that water fountain. Wherever you go, you must carry this little piece of paper. We are born of people who were abused by a system that wanted to put them down. We are born of people that were told they were monkeys. We are born of people that were told that they were animals so that they do not benefit from the Bible verse that says, and God made man in his image. People that would not benefit from that statement of Ellen White, who says every human being made in the image of God has power akin to that of the Creator. We were made animals so that we do not realize that we've got the same power that God has. We were born of people like that. Yes, some of us. I was born in that era, but I sort of matured in the new South Africa. And many of us in the African, we are born of those people. But here's what I know about our parents. Here's what I know about they did not drop the mic, as T.D. Jakes puts it. They did not let go. They stood. How do I know? Because we are here today. We grew up in challenging times. But what if our parents had just given up? Imagine what would have happened if they had given up on the hope that there is no way that we are monkeys, that we are born equal. And if we don't get this in our lifetime, we've got to keep fighting so that our children can get this. And maybe our children's children will grow up and never even hear the K word being said of them. What if our parents had given up, guys? Where would you be? I don't know where I would be. If I reflect on my father, he was never educated. But that man pushed through all the challenges of his time to put us where we are now. And imagine if he had stopped. Reflect even on the people that we like to criticize, our liberation struggle heroes, your Nelson Mandelas. What if they had retaliated in Robben Island, or had just committed suicide because it was just too hard? But they didn't. They pushed through. Why? Because they had the liberty of you and me. Your parents didn't think about the liberty of others. But just for my children. If only I can get something for my children. I know some of you here. I know some of us are struggling with some or another issue. And it's tempting to just let go. It's tempting to wake up. I'm not going anywhere today. This is too much. I've been carrying this for the past 5 years. It seems like God is silent. I'm just going to let it go. I'm going to ask you, just take one more day. Just take one more step for the sake of your children, for the sake of those who depend on you. Some of us are saying, man, I can't even pray anymore. I don't even feel like praying anymore. All right. And prayer is the only tool that we have accessible. And Ellen White says it's a key in the hand of faith. It's a key in the hand of faith. Prayer sometimes is the only way. Sometimes you speak, yes. Sometimes you roll up your sleeves and do something. And I am one of those who's doing something about some of the things that I can do something about. But I also have got areas in my own personal life that I can't do anything about. All I do every day is I come to God and I pray. So I don't even know what standing looks like for you. Standing might be, yes, standing and proactively standing, aggressively doing something. But sometimes standing might just be praying about the situation every single day. But there are those who are saying, but Lord, God has been quiet. I've been going through this for years. And God has been silent. As a result, I don't even have enough power to pray. Can I tell you something? That as much as God has not answered your prayer, that the specific thing that you have asked for, but there is one prayer that God has answered. And that is the prayer, Lord, save me. You are standing here today, feeling like or not feeling like prayer, but you are standing and you are alive because God has kept you standing. Because God, His grace continues to be sufficient for you. And so I want us to be, as we go into this series, I want us to take a posture and a commitment that says it's not always going to be easy. There will be beautiful times, because if you look at the story of Moses, he had an amazing time of finally liberating God's people. But you know what he had to go through to liberate them? God had to use 10 plagues to liberate the people of God, but he managed to liberate them, got them out. But you know how challenging the journey was between leaving Egypt and getting to the promised land. Moses himself never made it to the promised land due to the challenges that he was dealing with in that time. Let's close it with these words. Be strong in the Lord. Stand in the power of his might for the liberation of God's people, for the blessing of humanity, for the glory of God, and yes, for you to be able to remain a threat and intimidate the forces of the enemy. And may God bless you as you continue. I'm not going to say it's always easy. You don't feel like praying every day. You don't wake up and like, oh, yes, I want to pray. I sometimes do that. I do that. Sometimes I walk into my room and I sing, this is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice. Sometimes I walk in and I just flop down and I just cry and I sob because I don't feel like it. But we know the power of prayer. If there's a tool that helps us to stand and to stand strong, is the power of prayer. So from next week, we're gonna dress up. So picture us now, we are standing on holy ground, and God is our makeover artist, and he's going to put onto us the full armor of God so that we will be able to stand and march forward for his glory, so that we can stand and march forward, pointing people to Jesus. God bless you. Thank you very much.